What's happening, everybody? On today's show, recapping the Vols offseason as they were the only SEC team not to have a football spring game. We'll talk about that with Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. Also, is Vols baseball a lock to get to Omaha? We'll discuss with him. And the aftermath of Jimbo and Saban, how it's affecting all the other schools across the SEC. Locked On SEC starts right now.
Are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC, a crossover edition with our buddy Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On SEC is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube and at lockedonsec.com. All right, let's wait no longer. Let's bring in our guy, Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. He joins us now. Eric, what's going on, man?
Hey, doing well. Hope all is well with you over there in Houston.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's a busy time of year, and obviously, when we talk about, maybe a deader time just from a standpoint of, not a whole lot of storylines. Obviously, we're always looking ahead to the fall and what, summer ball is going to bring and all that across the conference. We got baseball is heading into the postseason now, but I want to start here, Eric, get your perspective on the story that really took over the SEC and the entire college football world just a week ago. Jimbo Fisher and Nick Saban publicly taking shots at each other. What did you and the Vols community take from that? Because when I hear from a lot of other SEC fans, it's kind of like, man, we're just liking standing on the sidelines and seeing these two guys go at it publicly.
Yeah, that was pretty much the reception that was here in Knoxville and around the Tennessee fan base. It's so bizarre because, I haven't been, this is, I guess, year 5 of my year in the industry. And so I haven't seen anything like this. And I would go on a limb and say you probably haven't seen much of like this either. When you live in a glass house, you never want to point the spotlight somewhere else because you're just inviting everyone to come in and raid your home, right? There's this unspoken rule. And I think Pat Forty wrote about this at Sports Illustrated, did a really nice job about how, yeah, you could talk amongst yourselves on the sideline, text back and forth, call each other and talk about, this coach or that coach maybe breaking the rules, but you would never go publicly and mention, calling somebody by name. And that's what Nick Saban did. And usually he's a guy that keeps other people's names and other people's programs out of his mouth. I think it kind of got away from him there. And Jimbo is a guy that just wasn't going to take any of it. So sitting back, watching, laughing, it was cinema. It was fantastic. And I think for one, Tennessee fans were glad that Tennessee was not in the spotlight on this one.
Well, let me ask you this, Eric. You are, Vols, this is your permanent crossover. We'll see, of course, if these things change with Oklahoma and Texas coming to the conference and, will we go to a pod system or whatever. But for now, they're permanently on your schedule every year. Are Vol fans secretly hoping, does this maybe force, with the NIL and paying players and having to deal with other schools doing this, does this maybe force Saban into, I don't want to say an early retirement, because if he retired now, nobody would be surprised.
No.
But do Vols fans maybe secretly hope this leads to Saban going, you know what, all this NIL stuff, I don't want to deal with it, I'm getting out?
Well, there's always the hope, right? That would be Christmas if Nick Saban were to, the day Nick Saban does retire, it's going to be Christmas for, all college football fans, SEC fans, especially Tennessee fans, because, that's just, the last, 13, 14 years, it's been an automatic loss on your schedule, right? And, who else can say that around the SEC? Sure, Alabama's got to play every team in the SEC West, but, South Carolina doesn't play Alabama every year. Florida doesn't play Alabama every year. So it is what it is. But I don't think anybody's anticipating, look, Nick Saban, he has adapted to everything that's been thrown at him. That's why he is the greatest of all time. He didn't like the way that the offense were changing into the up-tempo and the spreading things out and the RPOs and all that type of stuff. He's even came out on record and said, hey, I didn't want to do any of this, but I knew I had to make a change. That's why I went out and got Lane, and that's when we made a philosophy change on the offensive end, and he's won a couple of national championships since then. He was not in favor of the transfer portal. He said this is bad for college football. Yet he has adapted, and he's used it as well as anybody. Look at this offseason, going to get Jamar Gibbs, going to get Tyler Steen. And he's not a fan of name, image, and likeness, but he will adapt. And more so than anything, I took that as a warning shot, what he said Wednesday night, saying, hey, this is what it is. We don't like it. I think this is bad for college football, but there's other teams doing it. Texas A&M is buying every player. I don't know how much longer we can sustain. I took it as a warning shot too, just like Deion Sanders said to his alumni, to his givers, to his collectives, to everybody involved, saying, "Hey, let's pony up and go get it because I'm going to adapt and I'm still going to truck along." So one day Nick Saban will retire, but I don't think anybody around here thinks it's going to be anytime soon. I don't think this is a Jay Wright, Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams type situation. I think that Nick Saban's different from those guys, and I know that it's completely two different sports and they're legends in their own right, but I don't see Nick Saban slowing down anytime soon.
Yeah, and look, he's always going to be playing with a loaded deck. That he's always going to
Yeah.
have the advantage. Let me ask you this, Eric, just to pivot to you guys. Thoughts on how the Vols have been utilizing the NIL? I know a lot of different schools are creating the collectives and things like that. I know you're not supposed to use it with recruiting, but let's be real, it's happening out there. A&M, they got the number one class. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it wasn't just them selling people on the beauty of College Station. There was something else involved. It's okay. It's okay. There's workarounds around this, but I just bring it up because there's been a lot of smoke with Nico Iamaleava, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and there's been rumblings and smoke out there that Tennessee probably has an NIL deal in place with him.
Yeah, well, I mean, Tennessee first and foremost jumped on this from the get-go. They didn't run from it. Spire, Spire Media Group is widely thought of as the best collective in the country right now. And I know it's early, but they've been here from the forefront. They're just the guys that used to be a part of a local agency group here in Knoxville, Tennessee, that have represented professional tennis players, professional football players, baseball players. They had Eric Berry for a little bit, and so they were smart guys and have a whole lot of marketing experience. And they started Spire a couple years ago, and they've kind of stepped to the forefront of what a collective is and what a collective should be. And they're doing fantastic work, of the focus being on players and student athletes on campus right now. You look, they've got tons and tons of deals out there with current student athletes through different businesses and all that, and they're facilitating that. And of course, you look at other sports, Lady Vols, Tennessee baseball, Tennessee softball, Tennessee basketball. So they're doing a really, really nice job. And, when I'm asked about Nico and inducement and all that type of stuff, I mean, no one has all the answers. What you said, I mean, there's workarounds and everything. Let's just be real. Nico Iamaleava, when he gets to campus, he'll have ample opportunities. He will have ample, chances to go and make some money for being the quarterback here at Tennessee. But name, image, likeness is a thing. And if you don't have a collective that is steering in the right direction, plus there's state and local laws here in Tennessee that kind of help with that as well, you're going to be left behind. And I think Spire is doing a fantastic job. And, I know people might roll their eyes about this and everything. And I'm not saying this is the biggest reason why Nico is coming to Tennessee, but he took a couple of visits down here. He took his mom, who's, been battling some health situations here the last couple of years. And they chant his name at the basketball game, and, just seeing the red carpet being, rolled out for him and his family. I mean, I think it meant something to the family as well. So, credit Tennessee for picking their quarterback early, going all in on one quarterback. And so they, too, while everybody else is sitting back and watching Jimbo and Nick Saban, Tennessee can sit back and watch Texas and Alabama and Georgia fight over Arch Manning and just say, hey, we got our guys, so we're ready to roll.
Talking with Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. Coming up next, I do want to touch on a little bit of Vol Spring Ball and what we didn't get to see. A lot of folks outside of Knoxville and some of the takeaways and expectations for the Vols heading into 2022. We'll get to that in just a second. But first, want to remind you guys about our friends at rockauto.com. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models of cars out there, it's impossible for your local auto parts chain store to stock all the parts that you need. When you go in there, they're just going to go to their computer, start typing in the make and model, and find the part for you. It's the same thing you can do on your own. You have a computer. Do it on your own. Save time and money when you go to rockauto.com. You can save sometimes 30, 50, even 100% on the same parts from that chain store or car dealership at Rock Auto. And best part is they are a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Prices reliably low for every customer. They got everything you need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, even new carpet. Go check out their easy-to-use website today. You can find the solution for your auto parts needs. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck, and make sure you're right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know that we sent you. It's an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com. Continue our conversation with Eric Kane. And Eric, just kind of want to get your thoughts on how the Vols look throughout the spring. They're the one team we didn't get to see nationally play a spring game because of the renovations going on at Neyland. But what were your biggest takeaways that you saw from this team throughout the spring?
Yeah, just trying to get a lot of the younger guys, a lot of the 2s and the 3s last year starts, getting more reps and trying to create some depth. That's one thing that, Tennessee, I think in its first year under Josh Heupel, leaps and bounds, changed the program, changed the direction of the program. The offense is a top 10 offense in the entire country. Top 3 offense in the SEC. Of course, SEC leads the way pretty much all the time. But you didn't have any depth. I mean, you had 3 linebackers, 2 of which shouldn't have been playing, to be completely honest. You had no secondary depth. Offensive line, I mean, it was tough at times, right? But Tennessee found a way. And so finding some of these guys to step up, and the linebacker room looks a whole lot better right now. There's guys in the secondary that you can feel good about rotating in there. And of course, you're number 2 of that offense. You saw the step that Hendon Hooker took, and what he was able to accomplish with Josh Heupel in year number 1. Can he take a step? And can you break in 2 new wide receivers? Because as we know, Javonte Payton no longer here, and you've got Cedric Tillman, but of course you've got Bayless Jones, who's with the Chicago Bears now. So that's a lot of production on the offensive end. And getting Brew McCoy via the transfer portal was huge. And Jalen Hyatt's going to step up and play that slot receiver. So just trying to figure out all those pieces, looking at the offensive tackle position. I think it was a productive spring. Certainly still some questions heading into fall camp, but I think it was productive overall.
I think a lot of us are expecting Hendon Hooker to take his game to an even higher level this year. I know all the, off-season prognostications, some people naming him a dark horse for the Heisman. I think Josh Pate from 24/7, he said, he thinks Tennessee would have to go at least 9-3 for Hooker to seriously get in the Heisman conversation. But I think the thing is, when you talk about the stats that are needed to be in the running for the Heisman, stats will result in wins. If Hendon Hooker's putting up, thousands and thousands of yards and tons of touchdowns, it's going to result in wins on the field for the Vols. And yeah, they'll have to pull off an upset or two to be in that conversation, but just win. And man, if they could somehow, some way win that Georgia game this year, it feels like the Vols can absolutely at least be in contention for the SEC East this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Georgia will come down, obviously winning a national championship. Florida's down right now. Kentucky's a solid football team. I think Tennessee's stepping up in the right direction. So that team, who's going to be slotted right behind Georgia or contend with Georgia for the SEC East title and a trip down. I hate saying SEC East title, but a trip to go to Atlanta is what I should be saying. I think Tennessee's got a chance to to push for that this year, and then maybe overtake that in the following year. So we'll have to see. I think finding an outside wide receiver opposite Cedric Tillman was huge. And Brew McCoy's got a lot to prove. He really, really does. He's not played a whole lot of football, but he's got everything you want in terms of size and stature. Jalen Hyatt's a guy that we thought was going to step up and be the Bayless Jones of last year. And he took, he took a back seat, but he had a really, really productive spring. And you're hearing a lot of good things about him. But, the guy right there, Hendon Hooker, you look at his stat sheet from last year, 31 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 6 more rushing touchdowns or 5 more rushing touchdowns. Took over the starting job in week 3. I mean, he's a talented player, right? He's smart. He's quiet, but he's a leader. And I too think that here in year number 2, being able to scan more of the field, being able to understand more of the playbook, being able to be coached more by Josh Heupel and Joey Halsey in this offense, I'm expecting a step up. Now, how big of a step will that be? Because, I mean, that was a pretty good year last year to be, all things considered. But the more stats you put up, I agree with you, the more games you're going to win. And Tennessee should win that Pittsburgh game this year. Tennessee should beat Florida this year. If you don't beat Florida this year, I mean, is it ever going to happen, right? I mean, so those should be 2 more wins this year. Can you beat Kentucky again? Can you contend with Georgia? What do you look like against Alabama? I think a lot of that will have in store to where obviously how good Tennessee can be this year, but also, how good individually can Hendon Hooker be in terms of some of these other awards that he's in contention for.
Yeah, you talk about the Kentucky game. Crazy to think that Will Levis versus Hendon Hooker could be a story of 2 guys climbing up the NFL draft charts for next year's NFL draft.
Real quick, can I get your thoughts on that? CBS Sports loves then some Will Levis. Yeah. I think he's a fine player. He's got all the intangibles, but your thoughts on all this hype heading into the early mock drafts?
Yeah, I mean, you lose Wan'Dale Robinson. That's obviously going to hurt them. But, I think that they've done a good job of in the transfer portal. Kentucky adding Javon Baker, adding Tavion Robinson. You're just a little unknown there with some of the other pieces. And so how quickly can Will Levis gel with those pieces? Chris Rodriguez, I know he had the arrest a few weeks ago and the missed court date and all that. Hopefully he gets all that figured out. He's going to be a stud back in that backfield again for Kentucky. But yeah, it's about, we know Will Levis is pretty good, but man, how quickly can these weapons gel with him? We saw Wan'Dale Robinson did gel with him very quickly last year and had a phenomenal year and got drafted. So I think it's going to come down to that. If they get into summer, fall ball and these guys are, taking the top off and Will Levis is, in control of that offense, I think he can be very good. I don't know number one pick in next year's NFL draft good, like I think Chris Pasco had from CBS Sports. You're right, but no. I think it absolutely is like, if we're going through all the matchups, everybody's going to be talking about Bryce Young, everybody's going to be talking about Stetson Bennett, but like the sexiest matchup next year, under the radar sexy matchup, could be Will Levis versus Hendon Hooker in that Kentucky-Tennessee game next year.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. I want to get your thoughts on that because I was blown away a little bit in some of this offseason with all that talk.
Well, speaking of CBS Sports, Eric, I know you saw the rankings. They put out their college football coaching rankings a week ago, ranking 65 all the way up to 1. Josh Heupel, he did shoot up from year 1 to year 2. He was 52 a year ago. He's 33 in this year's rankings. Largely, I guess I don't have a problem with the specific ranking on the range, but more so with who was ahead of him. That's where I had the problem. Florida's Billy Napier was one spot ahead of him at 32. I like Billy Napier. I think he did a fantastic job at ULL, or Louisiana as we're calling him. I just at this point would not have Napier ahead of Heupel with what we just saw with collectively what we saw Heupel do at UCF and now what we saw him do in year 1 at Tennessee. I would have him a little bit higher there.
Yeah, Chris, you must have been listening to Locked On Vols last week because, I echo that, man. Like, I like Billy Napier. I think he's a good coach. I think he'll succeed at Florida, but I don't understand when you have, Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. He comes into 49. At Notre Dame coming into 49.
0-1 as the head coach, right?
Yeah. Mike Elko is at like 61. You've got the new Virginia Tech coach Pry at like 65, and all these other Dan Lanning, and they're way back there, just like Josh Heupel was in year 1 at 52, and that's understandable, right? Billy Napier has never coached it down in the SEC. I think he'll be fine. He's never and we saw Josh Heupel come into the worst situation last year and turn that sucker around and play some exciting brand of football, right? So I was a little intrigued to why Billy Napier. There's this love fest with Billy Napier in the national media, and that's fair. It's fine, but I didn't get that. It's an off-season talking point, and I certainly used it. So overall, 33 or 32nd, wherever it was, that's fine for Heupel. I think that's right where he should be. Honestly, I had no issue with that. But I, like you, the man right in front of Josh Heupel, I didn't quite understand. Kleiman was in there 2 spots ahead of him as well. They could have flopped, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, it's no big deal. But 33rd is about right for Josh Heupel right now. We'll see if he has a good year. Maybe he can jump inside the top 25.
Yeah, you talk about some people who, fall in love with the media, fall in love with Shane Beamer. They fall in love with Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. They fall in love with Billy Napier. Maybe Josh Heupel needs to go up to Bristol, Connecticut, do the round table at ESPN, do something, get himself out there a little bit more to be embraced by the media, because it seems like those guys always get the benefit of the doubt. I'm with you. Marcus Freeman, like when I saw College Game Day is skipping all the SEC environments and they're going to be at Ohio State, Notre Dame. I get it's going to be 2 highly ranked teams, but it feels like that's a game Ohio State's going to crush. Notre Dame, and nowhere optimistic. Everybody wants to be a big bad Brian Kelly, left them high and dry. Okay, I get it, but like we saw Freeman in the bowl game. He's got a long way to go. It's his first job as a head coach. Hey, we'll see, but he's outside the SEC. We don't have to worry about him. When we get into our next segment, Eric, I do want to switch gears, talk a little bit on this Tennessee baseball team, because they have been, breaking records all year, just historic season for them. Unbelievable what they're doing. We're going to get to that in just a second. Talking with Eric Cain from Locked On Vols, and we're talking a little bit about some of the dark horses in the Heisman race. If you want to see some of those Heisman odds, they're up at Bet Online. Our partners at Bet Online, they continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. You can find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including NBA playoffs, MLB scores, fights, even next season's NFL futures, and like I said, some of the college football early lines out there as well. Bet Online is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head on over to their website today. You can do so on your mobile device Learn all about the trends and action out there. Bookmark it into your phone. Should be the first website you go to every day, betonline.net. See all the trends and everything that is out there. All the information you need before you go place any bets. BetOnline, it is where the game starts. And Eric, we've got SEC tournament in Hoover. Just started up yesterday. Obviously, we got some games happening today. Tennessee will play later today in the third game spot, but wanted to just get your thoughts overall on this team. Tony Vitello, look, we were impressed with what he did last year, making the Vols relevant again, getting to the postseason and all that. But man, a ridiculous 25-5 record in conference, 49-7 overall. One of the greatest regular seasons in fall baseball history.
It's a really good team, and I know that's not breaking any news here, but that lineup, you lost guys like Liam Spence and Jake Rucker and Max Ferguson and a ton of those guys, those big bats in the middle of the order last year. But you brought back Jordan Beck, who is going to be a first-round pick. Drew Gilbert, who won the batting title in the SEC. Evan Russell, who has been here for 7 years and made a position switch behind the plate. But the pitching's been the story here. Chase Burns, Chase Dolander coming over from Georgia Southern, of course, Drew Beam, Blake Tidwell coming back, and that's why Tennessee's been successful this year. And if Tennessee's going to be successful in Hoover and in regional, super regional, and hopefully Hoover play as the postseason goes on, it's going to be because of that pitching. It's been phenomenal, and you have 4 guys to play 3 games typically, but it's going to come in handy in Hoover. It's going to come in handy potentially in a regional top setup, so and Hoover potentially as well. So that's why Tennessee's been so good. It's been a blast this year so far. Just a credit to Tony Vitello and Frank Anderson for coming in here, 5 years ago and little by little getting better each and every year, going with a chip on their shoulder, playing a fiery brand of baseball, kind of taking on that villain role, not only in the SEC, but in, college baseball altogether. That's something they take. That's something that they love. And it's been a whole lot of fun to watch this year. And hopefully it'll be an extended postseason run and they can get back to Hoover and win a couple of games.
All right. I've talked with multiple people that they're excited about, the double-digit home runs from so many different guys on this team this year. It is a nice ballpark that does play to the advantage sometimes. Let's just say Tennessee is hosting a regional, hosting a super regional, and they take care of business and they get out of that weekend, those 2 weekends, and get to Omaha. Will things change getting to that big, deep ballpark in Omaha with this team, in your opinion?
In my opinion, no. Now, I mean, you can't run away from the fact that, they play in a hitter-friendly ballpark, and that's fine. But, some of the Williamsport jokes that have been made all season long, I think that's a little far stretched because they've gone to Minute Maid Park and they've hit a ton of home runs out of there. They hit 5 home runs in game 1 against Ole Miss way back when. They, it was a launch pad there on Thursday night against Mississippi State. So they've proven that they, as they travel, they can also travel that power as well. So I think that's one of the more overhyped stories, really digs at the Cincy baseball program that I just don't believe is true all that time. And, I'll watch every single game, and I'm not going to pretend like everybody that's a college baseball fan watches every single game at Tennessee. And this is no hyperbole. So many of their shots are like, I mean, there's a train track back there. It's over the tracks. It's over the road. It's over the scoreboard. I mean, it's truly incredible that the power that this team possesses, and not just your Drew Gilberts and your Evan Russells and your Jordan Becks, but it's your Jarrell Ortegas. It's your Blake Burks, who is a true freshman that is fighting for reps, fighting for at-bats on this baseball team and can't find him anywhere because you have Luke Lipsius, as Tony Vitello put him the other night, as a 40-year-old first baseman, and he's found a role as the DH here because Jared Dickey's injured. So top to bottom, the depth for this baseball team is truly incredible. And again, it's a credit to Tony Vitello for his knack for recruiting. We knew he was a good recruiter, coming in, but now we're seeing the development as well these last couple of years, and especially this year.
One of my buddies who's a Vols fan sent me a graphic last week where David DeLucci said, this is the best team that college baseball has ever seen from top to bottom. He said, yeah, so I guess the Vols are going to lose the first 2 games in the regional and go home, right? I guess that's just the Tennessee mindset, right? Like whenever anybody hypes you up as this is the greatest we've ever seen, man, you can't help but be like, yeah, we're losing this. We're cursed.
Well, I mean, how many times, you've seen the New England Patriots do it a couple of times, and there are situations, don't get me wrong, but it's not been wire to wire, but it's pretty much been wire to wire this season. Tennessee's been the clear-cut best team in the country, and so many times you see them getting knocked out in the divisional round, or getting knocked out in the the conference finals or whatever. So it's hard not to think that way because again, Tennessee's been burned so many times, but hopefully this year will be different.
Last thing, Eric, before we let you go, we mentioned the spring game not happening at Neyland because there's improvements going on at Neyland. What are you hearing? Where are we on the updates at Neyland, and how much nicer are things going to be this season and moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's going to look a little different this year. Of course, the total capacity is going to come down. Here's a hint, or not a hint. Here's a secret, I guess. Here at Tennessee, everybody makes a big deal about the 102.455. It hasn't been 102.455 in a long time. I can promise you that. But you're taking away some of the seating in in this the north end zone, putting a new jumbotron there. In the south end zone, you're gonna take the jumbotron down and you're gonna put up one that replicates the new one. You're putting premium seating in there, like you're seeing right there, and kind of a bar set up and some more more modernized kind of seating capacities that you're seeing in more stadiums right now. So it's on its way. It's a start. They're going to continue to do some more stuff as the year goes on, but it is on track. Everything I'm hearing, the construction is on track. It should be ready to roll, even though Tennessee moved up its opener from a Saturday to a Thursday night, 2 days. 2 days closer, it should be ready to roll, and it should look a little bit better. And I think as years go on, you'll see more of an impact in terms of making it more of a fan experience, and getting the Wi-Fi up and running more. Obviously, the food and beverage, the concourse, making them a little bit more inviting. But the two jumbotrons and the premium seating is more the focus this offseason.
He is Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. For our listeners on Locked On SEC, let them know what you're going to have on the podcast this week.
Yeah, tons of recap and tons of preview, I guess. It's Tennessee baseball in Hoover coming up. Tennessee basketball, a really nice little run here. A couple of a 4 and a 5-star commit and a couple of transfers. So recapping that, and of course the latest going on with the Tennessee football team and around the SEC spring meetings up on the horizon. So a whole lot to talk about on Locked On Vols.
Yeah, see if Josh Heupel takes a shot at Jimbo Fisher. Let's just make this a whole everybody take jabs at everybody. SEC Media Days will be literally, they could sell tickets to fans to come watch SEC Media Days because it's going to be that awesome. He is Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. Eric, I swear I didn't mean to wear orange today. It just happened that way, but worked out. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, anytime, man.
All right, he is Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols. That is just about going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. We will talk to you guys later in the week, talking all things SEC right here on Locked On SEC. Thanks again for making us your first listen every day. Now go make your second listen. Check out Eric with Locked On Vols. Check out Locked On Razorbacks, Locked On Bama. Tons of other great podcasts all across the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Chris Gordy. You guys have an awesome day.